There's something very strange going on in how we talk about heart disease. You could almost call it a conspiracy. In the last few years, there have been a series of articles and publications claiming that heart disease for women is worse than for men. Dozens of articles and publications talking about how women are more likely to die of heart attacks, how heart attacks are worse for women, how women are more likely to die, etc. However, this isn't really what the science says, and when you examine these closely, you can see that they're being quite disingenuous. Now, I can do breakdowns on all the articles I just showed you, but I really want to focus on this one. It's from the American Heart Association, and read the title. Women found to be at higher risk for heart failure and heart attack death than men. So read that again. Women found to be at higher risk for heart failure and heart attack death than men. But what does it actually say? So it starts off with this. Researchers found that women face a 20% increased risk of developing heart failure or dying within 5 years after their first severe heart attack compared with men. So already that's not exactly what the headline said, but then look at what they say underneath. The second dotted point, in addition, women were more likely than men to be older and have more complicated medical history at the time of their heart attacks. Hang on, so they were older and less healthy when their heart attacks took place? It says it again further down in the article. Women were older and faced a variety of complications and more risk factors that may have put them at greater risk for heart failure after a heart attack. So hang on, the women in the study were older and less healthy than the men in the study. So you can see why it's very misleading to use this study to claim heart attacks are worse for women. They weren't taking 100 men and 100 women of the same age in the same health condition. They were taking women who were older and had more complications and more risk factors to get this result. Then you had this strange line here. In addition to the elevated risk for heart failure among women, researchers found, and then they go through a list of facts which don't show an elevated risk factor for women at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Now, read this. A total of 24,737 patients had the less severe form of heart attack and STEMI. Among this group, 34.3 were women and 65.7 were men. And just below that, a total of 20,327 patients experienced STEMI, the more severe heart attack. Among this group, 26.5% were women and 73.5% were men. Hang on a minute. For both the more severe and less severe heart attacks, the vast majority of victims were men. Double for the less severe heart attacks and triple for the more severe heart attacks. So how exactly are these researchers finding that women are at a greater risk of heart attack than men, when in this study, men were 2 to 3 times more likely to have heart attacks in the first place, especially the severe kind? It goes on to say, the development of heart failure either in the hospital or after discharge remained higher for women than men for both types of heart attack, even after adjusting for certain co-founders. Women had a higher unadjusted rate of death in the hospital than men in both the STEMI, 9.4 versus 4.5%, and NSTEMI, 4.7 versus 2.9% groups. However, the gap narrowed considerably for NSTEMI after confounder adjustments. But remember, the women in the study were older and had more complications. But just how much older? Women were more likely to be an average of 10 years older than men at the time of their heart attack, usually an average of 72 years for women versus 61 for the men, which is 11 years, not 10. But just remember how much more likely men were than women to have a heart attack who were 10 years older than them. 34.3% were women and 65.7% were men for the less severe heart attack, and 26.5% women and 73.5% were men for the more severe heart attack. That's 3 out of 4 of the more severe heart attack were men. And those men were 11 years younger. And then there's this. Women also had more complicated medical histories at the time of their heart attacks, including high blood pressure, diabetes, atrial fibrillation, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, risk factors that may contribute to heart disease. So not only were the women much older, but they were much less healthy and had other health conditions, and yet still, despite that, the men were 2 to 3 times more likely to have heart attacks. So please answer something. How in the world did the researchers look at that data and come to the conclusion that women found to be at higher risk for heart failure and heart attack death than men? If anything, this data shows that heart disease and heart attacks are much worse for men. And that's in fact what the real world data says. So let's take a look at some other data on this topic. Here's one to start from Harvard Medical School. Throughout life, heart attacks are twice as common in men than women. From Johns Hopkins, men develop heart disease 10 years earlier on average than women do. And then the website, men develop heart disease 10 years earlier on average than women do. And therefore, it's probably logical to assume that men die on average about 10 years younger than women do of heart disease. And here we have the average age for a heart attack is 64.5 for men and 70.3 for women. Let's go to some government stats. This is the American Heart Association on sex and the biology of sudden cardiac death. The name kind of speaks for itself, sudden cardiac death. Among 5,800 subjects who presented with sudden cardiac death between 1988 and 2017, approximately 80% were men and 20% were women. This is from the CDC. Over the past decade, males were nearly twice as likely as females to die of heart disease, and you can see the chart. Again, kind of speaks for itself. Now, these charts are statistics from the American Heart Association. There's not too much to explain because it's pretty easy to see for yourself. The top chart is prevalence of coronary heart disease by age and sex. And then the second one is prevalence of myocardial infarction, which is this heart disease, by age and sex. The blue bar is for men and the red bar is for women. And then you can see the ages underneath the bar. Now you can see in the 20s and 30s, it's more or less the same because you don't really get much heart disease then. But you can very clearly see in these graphs that heart disease in men is either twice as bad or in some cases 3 times as bad. I mean, these bars really kind of speak for themselves. But here's where the conspiracy starts. These charts no longer exist on the internet. They've been removed. This is what you get when you click on the link that used to take you to those pages. And this is what that link used to look like. Now, Splice wouldn't let me copy and paste directly, so I just took a screenshot of the URL in my email. But don't worry, I'll put the link in the description of this video so you can try all this for yourself. So how am I able to show you these charts? Well, because I used the Wayback Machine. And the Wayback Machine is a way that people can save articles and web pages to be frozen at a particular point in time. So even if they're deleted or changed in the future, you can go back and see what they were once upon a time. Now, it's very interesting. Look at how many people downloaded and saved these charts in 2019. Remember how most of those articles I showed you in the beginning about heart attacks being worse for women started at 2019 and then from like 2020, 2021, etc.? Why were all those people saving these charts in 2019? What did they think was going to happen? What did they know was going to happen? And who is they? Who are all these people who at the same time made an effort to make sure that this information wasn't erased off the internet forever? There's definitely something going on here. And I am very much not done with this story. Consider this video a preview because next year I'm going to look into this.